Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's Journey Through Torah. This week we're on Parsha Reeh. Reeh means to see or to behold something. And Israel is being instructed now that when they get into the land, there's things they need to do. And we need to take a look at this advice for us as well. It's not just important that they get into the land. It's also important that they get into the land and they inhabit it in a way that is honorable to Yahweh so they can remain in the land. So it's not just about getting to the destination. Okay. And we do see some things, in the journey and where we're at now, and there's things to learn in the process, and we know there's a goal, but yet when they get to the land, they can't just do whatever they want when they get into the land. When they get into the land, they need to learn, again, continuing. See, it doesn't stop, does it? They need to learn to walk in his ways. Now, the thing is, Yahweh is instructing them here now where they're at, so that when they get there, they'll know what they're supposed to do. And that is a really good thing if we pay attention. Yahweh is instructing us and teaching us day by day the things that we need to know for life so that we don't have to just say, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to make these choices? He gives us how to make these choices. Okay, we find that in this Parsha specifically, Parsha Reeh, he says, so when you go into the land, you're going to go to this place called Shechem, and you're going to put the covenant in place there. In other words, he shows us that there's a responsibility in our lives that when we get into the land, no matter where we're going, as we go around, that we have to look at the choices that are in front of us so that we can make decisions on how to act accordingly, on how we can look at the ways that Yahweh has put in front of us and choose the paths that give him glory, that give him honor, and that show his life, his ways in the midst of all that. Okay. So when we look at this parsha, we start off with them being instructed to go into the land and to go to this place called Shechem, which is a place called shoulder. We'll get to more of that in a minute, but this is also alluding to the valley of decision. In other words, again, we have choices to make, and these choices are not just about how we react to things that are around us, but how we do things around us. I mean, how we live life with one another, how we have relationships with the people around us, the choices that we make before we get into the situations where we feel like we're backed in a corner. We have to sow the word, like sowing seed. We have to sow the word, not just into our own lives by reading it and by getting into it, but by placing it wherever we go. In other words, in our daily life and our walking forward in life and everything that we do, we are acknowledging that Yahweh goes before us. And so we need to look to him to find the answers for the things that life presents to us. Okay. So let's go and let's take a look at it. Let's go Deuteronomy 11. Let's look at verse 26. See, I am setting before you today the blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the commandments of Yahweh your God, which I command you today. And the curse if you do not obey the commandments of Yahweh your God, but turn aside from the way that I am commanding you today to go after other gods that you have not known. Verse 29. And when Yahweh your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of it, you shall set, now see that? This is a responsibility for you. You shall set the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal. Are they not beyond the Yarden, west of the road toward the going down of the sun, in the land of the Canaanites who live in the Arava, opposite Gilgal, by the oak of Moreh? So first he's saying that when you go in here, he's giving us directions on where it is, but he's also saying you are to set this in place. Now, the thing is, Yahweh is the one who sets things in place. He is the one who sets order. He is the one who sets his word. He is the one that goes in front of us all. So we have to follow. But here he's telling us we have a responsibility to set that covenant in place. But he gave us directions. So again, we see it's not just a matter of doing whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want. He's showing us these are the things that I desire for you. This is what you're going to do. This is where you're going to do it. Okay, so he gives us directions on how to follow him and how to follow through with him on all these things. Now, again, let's take a quick look at this. Again, let's go back to this. Because we are given the word, we are to set it in place in the land where we dwell, like sowing the seed of the word, not just within us, but wherever we ourselves are planted. There's some stuff to be said about that, okay? We are sown into the world, right? We are like plants. We are being planted, but we need to grow where we're at to produce a harvest, to produce good fruit. That's what we're called to do, right? So we continue in them, all right? So now we are given the word. We are set it in place, again, where it says you are to do this, and he tells us this is opposite Gilgal, beside the oak of Moreh. Now, this is an interesting phrase, the oak of Moreh. Moreh is also a word for teacher. So beside the oak of Moreh. So let's take a look at this. Where else do we see reference to this place and what's being taught there? Genesis 12:6. Avram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh, in the time the Canaanites were in the land. And Yahweh appeared to Avram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built there an altar to Yahweh who had appeared to him. Now you see this? Yahweh is telling them to go back to this place where he made this promise to Avram. So Israel is going to fulfill this promise that was made to Abraham. Remember, Avram became Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. Yaakov became the 12 tribes. These tribes are Israel, right? So here we have them coming into the land and making a fulfillment of this promise that Yahweh gave to Avram. Yahweh said he's going to do this, but yet his descendants are going to have to make this acknowledgement. They are going to walk in this. They are going to do it, and they are going to follow through with that. So if you take a look at where this is, Elon Moreh, so we have a picture here that shows you the view from Elon Moreh, and if you look at the map, you can see Har Eval and Har Gerizim. That's Mount Eval, Mount Gerizim, and where you see Nablus there on the map, that is modern day Shechem. So if you look, you can see these two places are right next to each other. And the interesting thing is when you're looking at it, you have Gerizim and Eval right next to each other, Shechem right in the middle. And it says they are to place the blessing and to place this covenant in the land that they go to. Now, the interesting thing when we go and we read through, we find that when they go into the land, they set half the tribes toward Gerizim, half the tribes towards Eval. The Levites, the priests, it's in the center in Shechem. They are to declare the blessings of this covenant. They are to declare the cursings or the oaths of this covenant, and the people are to respond with Amen. And if you look, you can find Mount Gerizim is the mount of blessing, Mount Eval is the mount of cursing. And there's a stark difference between the two. Now, understand, these are not drastically so far away from each other that it's a different atmosphere, different climate. No, they get the same amount of rain. They get the same, which is, isn't much, but they get the same amount of rain. They're in the same area. They have the same atmosphere. They get the same air, all that, right? But if you look at them, you'll notice Mount Gerizim, there's stuff growing on it. It's green, and there's vineyards there, and there's people living there, and there's wells on Mount Gerizim. It's an amazing place. Been there. It's an amazing place to look at. Mount Eval, it's rocky, it's dry, it's barren. There's no wells on it. It's interesting, right? So again, you have this contrast where if you stand at Shechem, the valley of decision, or the place between the shoulders, and you look and you have before you a picture of blessing and cursing, it's to show you that when you walk in the blessing, this is what it looks like. This is what it goes for you. When you walk in the cursing, this is what it looks like. This is how it will go for you, spiritually speaking, right? So we have a representation of literally walking in the covenant. All right, so these are some things that Yahweh says, when you go into the place, I want you to be able to look and have a reminder of what is ahead of you and what is before you, if you will continue to walk in my ways. All right, so we find this here. It teaches us that it's not necessarily our circumstances that show either blessing or cursing, but rather what we do with what we've been given. Matthew 5:45 says he makes the sun to rise on the evil and the good. He sends rain on the just and the unjust. The opportunity afforded us the same is the same for all of us. It's a matter of how you handle what you've been given. Okay, and there's a lot of things to do with that. Like I said, there's choices to make in life. We can make a choice to do what we feel we need to do, right? And again, obedience is a choice as well. And it's the obedience that helps bring a blessing into our life. I'm not talking about just a place of covenant. I'm talking about blessing within the place of covenant, right? We're obedient to Yahweh. We do what he says. And because of that, that brings us to a place of blessing. So he says, so when you get to the land and you see how the people serve their gods, now do you notice that? You see what he says here? You know what's happening? So he says, so I want you to understand, I want you to follow me. Do not follow after the ways of these other people, the ways of these nations. Follow me closely, right? Keep my mitzvot, do these things. Do not forsake my ways. There will be a blessing here if you do. And then he again warns them in this. He says, you shall not worship Yahweh your God in that way. In what way? The way these other nations did. It says, but you shall seek the place that Yahweh your God will choose out of all your tribes to put his name and make his habitation. There you shall go. Okay, a couple things. First and foremost, we see that there is a charge to deal with idolatry in our lives. Now, he says, when you go into the land and the land that I'm giving you, you're going to have to rid these areas of the idolatry that is there, because this is a place where you will dwell. All right. Now, this is not a thing to systematically go through the whole world and start busting people's stuff up. Okay. But what this is in the place where you dwell, in the place where you reside, I do not want you to have these things in your midst. I do not want you to have these things there for you. I do not want you to look and see how these other nations serve their gods and say, ooh, I want to serve my God like that. He says you are not to do that, because he instructs us in ways to worship him. All right. So the first thing we see is we are to rid our lives of idolatry and follow Yahweh wholeheartedly. We are told to discern these things. And again, this is what happens. Discernment just slightly off can cause big problems later. And often, if we're not careful, we can be led by what we feel and not led by proper discerning of the word and what's going on around us. Now, feelings are a big thing, okay? Emotions are very powerful. Yahweh made them. He created them. And I'm not telling you to hide your emotions, but what I am saying, we're not to be led by our emotions. We are to be led by discerning and making the choices to follow after Yahweh and to follow him wholeheartedly. Okay? So if we're not careful, we can make choices based on an emotional situation. Well, and no matter what that emotion is. I mean, that could be just a sense of euphoria. It could be just, hey, I'm happy, or it could be sadness, or it could be, whatever the emotion is, we are not to let the emotion that we're experiencing at the time make the decisions for what we do in life, because it can lead us away and astray from the things that Yahweh has given to us. Okay, just because we have an emotional experience doesn't make it right. Okay, I think we can all find scenarios and think of things that do that. I mean, just because something may excite us or get a thrill of something doesn't mean that it's right and that it's okay, right? So again, we need to make discerning choices in regards to how we live in the land where we are put, and to make the decisions of placing the covenant before us. And so the emotional experiences, if we're not careful, will follow that, which means we will be changing the Torah, which means we're going to follow what everybody else is doing based on how we feel in our emotions, and that's not obedience, okay? Emotional experiences can be powerful, they can be spiritual, but they're not always right. What feels right is based on our state of being at the time. So following emotional experiences can lead to a life of a roller coaster ride, right? We're up and down and up and down and up and down. We're told in Proverbs that there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end is the way of death. And so again, we have emotional experiences, but don't be led by the emotional experiences. They can lead us astray if we're not careful, all right? Hebrews 8:10 says, "This is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh. I will put my laws in their hearts and are in their mind, and I will write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people." That's it. He says that he will take the word that was given to us, and he didn't say he was going to change the word. He said he was going to take the word that was given to us, and he was going to put it within us, write it in our minds, put it in our hearts. In other words, it's going to become a part of who you are. It's not just going to be something that you read. It's not just going to be something to talk about. It's going to be something for you to experience. And that, again, is looking at Reeh, to see or to behold. When we are walking in the word, we get to see it in our midst. Okay, we get to see it in the midst of us. So back to Deuteronomy 12, verses 4 and 5, but focusing on verse 5 right here. It says, "You shall seek the place that Yahweh your God will choose out of all your tribes to put his name and make his habitation there, and there you shall go." So he says that when you get into the land, it's not going to be like you're going to camp around the tabernacle and you're going to be within sight. You're going to be able to see the tabernacle wherever you are in the camp. Right? You're not going to see the pillar of fire and the cloud, and you're not going to have these experiences. When you go into the land, life is going to change. Now, so what happens when they say, okay, but they want to continue with the offerings or the Moedim, right? They're supposed to bring offerings for the Moedim and to bring the korbanot, these animals in there. What happens then? Can they just do it wherever? Can they say, no, we're just going to do that in our homes? No, they could not. They had to go to the place of meeting. They had to go where they could gather with all Israel, and a place where Yahweh said where his name dwelt. And people can say, yes, but we are the temple for the Holy Spirit. And you would be right. Okay? I'm not speaking against that at all. But understand, even in the Brit Hadashah, Yeshua and his disciples, they gathered in homes, they gathered in the synagogues, and they gathered at the temple. Okay, not one of these replaced the function of the other. Okay, they could meet in the homes, but they couldn't bring their offerings and make their sacrifices in the homes. They could meet in the synagogues, but the same thing. I mean, the temple had the function where they could gather with all Israel to do so, and then in the synagogues they could meet, they could talk the Torah, they could do whatever, and in the homes they could gather with their communities and those immediately around them. I mean, each one had its own purpose and function. Okay, so he says, so when you go into the land and you have this, you are going to go where I place my presence, where I place my name to dwell there, right? So where was that, and what did that look like? Okay, well, so here's a few things. During the conquest of the land, which took them 7 years, the Mishkan was mainly at Gilgal. Gilgal means circle. Okay, so it was mainly at a place called Gilgal. And then they crossed the Yarden and they set up memorial stones there, and then they went to Shiloh. Okay, Shiloh, it's an amazing place. If you go to modern day Shiloh, there is they've made a park there, and where you can talk about and experience things regarding to the ancient Shiloh. And they do have a spot where they believe the tabernacle would have rested. And honestly, there's not too many places around as far as choices go. So they've got to be close. They've got to be close, because if you go there and you look around, there aren't too many places that could fit just the size and the structure and the way that it was supposed to be and how it's supposed to be arranged. And so they've done a lot of research on this, but it is an amazing place to be. You go there and you look and you see hills all around and all these other places, and you go there and you find pottery. They still, to this day, they find pottery shards in different places, all on the hills and everything all around. You know why? Because of this. As you are to go where he places his name, and there you are to bring your offerings and do these things. So when they brought the offerings to Yahweh, there were certain offerings, you got portions of that back. Like a peace offering, you got some of that back. Okay, so I mean, of the different offerings, some were given all and completely and totally, but then others you had portions back that you were supposed to eat, and you ate, and your family with you ate, and all this was there, right? Well, if they brought a clay jar, a clay pot, it couldn't be cleansed for the sake of clean or unclean, the sake of purity, right? So now that they've eaten in the presence of Yahweh and here, and they've used this, now it's kind of considered a holy thing, though. So what do they do with it? Well, they would break it so that it wouldn't be used for any other purpose. Okay, so it's interesting because you can find pottery shards on the mountains, on the hills, all around where they believe the tabernacle would have stood. So again, it's just amazing to take a look at this. So I've got a map here. It says the allocation of the land of the 12 tribes of Israel. And if you look here, you can see how they were broken up. You see the Yarden going down the center there with Manasseh, Gad, Reuven, on the west side, or I'm sorry, on the east side, and then to the west of the Yarden, you have the other tribes that are allocated there. Zoom in a little bit. And you can see the area it's here that I'm trying to show you. I want to show you a couple of these places. If you look right there by Gad and Reuven, you see Gilgal. Okay, that's where the Ark and the Mishkan would have been for most of the part. And if you look slightly up and to the left, you find Shechem right there. And again, to the west, to the left of that, you have Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. And right below Shechem and Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, you have Shiloh. And if you go down, you find Yerushalayim. And so again, these are things that are important to the history and important to the Ark there. And so just to give you an idea, when you're reading about it and looking in the scriptures, where were these places? How far were they from each other? And what did they look like? How did all this break down? So you get to see some of that, okay? So Shiloh. Shiloh is about 20 miles. When you look at the map, you can see that just for reference. Shiloh is about 20 miles north of Jerusalem. It's on a north-south travel route that linked Beersheba and Shechem. All right, so if you look, you can see Beersheba and Shechem being linked there by this road, by being traveled by this road. And this is the first place where the tabernacle became a, let's say, permanent structure. Okay, I'll say, semi-permanent, right? It wasn't permanent, but this is the first place where it sat a very, very, very long time and wasn't supposed to move from here. We find in Joshua 18:1, it says, the whole congregation of the people of Israel assembled at Shiloh, and they set up the tent of meeting there, and the land lay subdued before them. So the Mishkan was there at Shiloh for quite some time. And then you can read the stories about that, like the Shmuel, right? The prophet. You can read about him being there. Hannah, his mother, and dedicating him at the temple. This would have happened at Shiloh. This would have happened there at this place, and it stood there for quite some time. Now, when it moved from there, after the capture and the return of the Ark, it moved to Nov, which is close to Jerusalem. We find in 1 Samuel 21 that Saul had the city and the priests destroyed in 1 Samuel 22. And later we find it had been set up in Gibeon, which was about 5 miles northwest of Jerusalem during Zadok's term, which we find in 1 Chronicles 16. And the interesting thing is we find that King Solomon went to Gibeon to sacrifice there. And the Mishkan is last mentioned in 1 Chronicles 21. And when it was mentioned there, it was at Gibeon. Now, why would Solomon go to Gibeon if his dad, David, right? Solomon's dad, David, brought the Ark to Jerusalem? Why would he go to Gibeon to make offering there when the Ark was in Jerusalem at a tent there? Because the original tabernacle was there at Gibeon. Okay, why did they split them up like that? Honestly, I don't know. Okay, but they were. Okay, we know that when the Ark was brought to Jerusalem, David had a new tent made for the Ark to be put there in Jerusalem. We find this in 2 Samuel 6:17, where it says they brought in the Ark of Yahweh and they set it in its place inside the tent. David had pitched for it, and David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before Yahweh. So ultimately what happened is that this new tent that was set up, and they kind of decommissioned the old one. I don't see instruction directly where they were told to do that, but this is just the way that it happened, okay? So what Yahweh is telling Israel, he says, but you shall seek the place that Yahweh your God will choose out of all your tribes to put his name and make his habitation there. So seek the place is Hamakom. Hamakom. So is it really about the place, or is it about his name? Okay, Hamakom is the place. Literally, the Makom is place. But it's also interesting to see how in Scripture, Yahweh is referenced in the place. Not just a place, the place. Right? Let's take a look at some of this stuff. Hamakom is one of the names that's used for Yahweh and how people relate to him. And I know I use the word name here very loosely because I don't believe it's his name specifically, but it's how he is called, something that we can identify him with. Okay, it's one of his characteristics. It's one of the things that he does for us. So it's not necessarily his name, but it is part of his character and how he reveals himself to us. So in that aspect, you can say that. All right. Genesis 28:10 and 11. We find that Jacob left Beersheba, which you see on that map that I had, went to Beersheba, and he went toward Haran, and he came to a certain place, and he stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head, lay down in that place to sleep. So it says he came to a certain place. So it's vayifga is the word, a certain, he came to certain, he lighted it upon, bamakom. Bamakom is in the place. So not just a place, what it says here, it's in the place. So again, why something specific here? In the place? Well, what is the place? Well, again, we see he has this dream. All right, Yahweh appeared to him in these visions, and he says, Yahweh is in this place, and I didn't know it. So again, this idea of bamakom, makom, hamakom, he is there. And if we're not paying attention, we can miss it. He is in this place. And yes, Yahweh is everywhere, but there are certain places and certain times and certain situations that he chooses to reveal himself to us. Look in Ezekiel 3:10-12. It says, Moreover, he said to me, Son of man, all my words that I shall speak to you, receive in your heart and hear with your ears, and go to the exiles, to your people, and speak to them and say to them, Thus says the Lord God, whether they hear or refuse to hear. Then the Spirit lifted me up, and I heard behind me the voice of a great earthquake. And what did the voice say? Blessed be the glory of Yahweh from its place. This word is mimkomo. From his place is makom. So the glory of Yahweh from makom. Well, the glory of Yahweh is from Yahweh. Okay, it's not just about this part or this area. It is him himself, right? So again, this idea is representing Yahweh as the place. He is the place where we come before him. He is the one that where we bring our offerings, and he is the one that we come and give ourselves to him, right? Okay, and commentary on this says, as the soul fills the body, God's presence pervades the universe. God as Hamakom, the spacious one, was meant to convey a well that could pray in one's heart without uttering a sound and still be heard by God. God was never out of reach. We were, in fact, immersed with God's ubiquitous presence. Wow. The thing I want to try to point out here is, people try to find themselves. They try to say, well, I need to find me, and not really. You need to find Yahweh, and he will tell you the plans he has for you. He will tell you what his place is for you. He will tell you his desires for you. Find him, and you will find you, right? He will tell you everything that you were created to be. So again, he is the place where we are whole and the place where we fit and where we belong. Psalm 90 verse 1 is a prayer of Moses, the man of God. He says, Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Again, he is making a declaration toward Yahweh. He's saying, you are our dwelling place. You are the one where we live. Because of you, we live and we exist and we dwell here with you. You are our dwelling place. No matter where we are, no matter where we live, we dwell in him. So again, this idea of makom, you may have heard kumi ori, rise and shine, for your light has come. This word makom is from the word kum. Kum means to rise. So makom is a place where something is or ought to be. Makom is related etymologically to mekayim, which means something that sustains and provides existence. That is exciting, isn't it? He says that makom is something that sustains and provides existence. Well, that is Yahweh, right? Look at Colossians 1:12. Giving thanks unto the Father, which has made us meet to the partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, who has delivered us from the power of darkness and has translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. Verse 16. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in the earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. This word consist is interesting. It does not just exist, but consist is what it says, which is related to the Hebrew word for mitzvah, tzav, command. So by him, he created all things, and all things are doing as they are commanded to do by the one that created it. See that? He truly is Hamakom, right? And this is showing parts of his character, parts of his life. His name and his habitation is his character and his presence. And we're told in the scripture to honor his name. And we can honor his name or we can profane his name based on how we live, how we exemplify him here in the earth. Are we walking in covenant? Are we doing the things to uphold the covenant that he has given to us? That means we're walking in his presence. We are learning to walk with him. We are walking in his place. Exodus 20 verse 7 says, "You shall not take the name of Yahweh your God in vain, for Yahweh will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain." Psalm 139:20 says, "They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain." So taking his name in vain doesn't mean that they mispronounce it, or doesn't mean that they're just, what is it saying? Well, it really means to just not regard it as holy, okay? But it's not just by speaking it. It's not really about mispronouncing it as much as it is not living according to it. To honor his name is to live in a way that glorifies his character, who he is. To profane his name is to live in a way that does not bring honor to Yahweh and his life and his character. Look at Leviticus 18:21. It says, "You shall not give any of your children to offer them to Molech, and so profane the name of your God. I am Yahweh." Notice there's nothing about pronunciation there. It's about action and behavior and the things that you're doing. And that is how you can profane his name. Leviticus 19:12, "You shall not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of your God. I am Yahweh." Leviticus 21:6, "The sons of Aaron shall be holy to their God, and not profane the name of their God, for they offer Yahweh's food offerings, the bread of their God. Therefore they shall be holy." Leviticus 22:31, "So you shall keep my commandments and do them. I am Yahweh. And you shall not profane my holy name, that I may be sanctified among the people of Israel. I am Yahweh who sanctifies you, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Yahweh." Look at Isaiah 48, verse 9. It says, "For my name's sake I defer my anger. For the sake of my praise I restrain it for you, that I may not cut you off. Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tried you in the furnace of affliction. For my own sake I do it. For how should my name be profaned? My glory I will not give to another. Listen to me, O Jacob and Israel, whom I called. I am he, I am the first, and I am the last." See that? He's saying that it's our actions and the things that we do that can profane his name or bring honor to it, right? Amos 9:11, "In that day I will raise up the booth," the word there is sukkah, "of David, that is fallen, and repair its breaches, and raise up its ruins, and rebuild it as the days of old, that they may possess the remnant of Edom, and all the nations who are called by my name, declares Yahweh who does this." Again, V'kol Hagoyim, right? Hagoyim is the nations, Asher Nikra, that are called Shmi Alehem, that are called with my name on them, with my name, by my name. So again, to be called by his name, it's not like, okay, we now don't have our own name, we have his name. No, it means we are his, and we represent him, his life, his character. We have his name on us, which means we learn to live like him. We learn to be changed day by day by day, right? Okay, Ezekiel 39:7 says, "My holy name I will make known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let my holy name be profaned any more. And the nation shall know that I am Yahweh, the Holy One of Israel." The idea here is this: we are to seek Yahweh no matter where we are, no matter where he has placed us, no matter where he has planted us, and look and see this is what is before us. Today he sets before us life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose the life, right? Why? So that you and your seed, your descendants, will live and be blessed, is what we're looking at. So here he says, this is how you do it. I have provision for you. I have life for you. I have blessing for you. But in the path of day-to-day life, choose the ones that bring life. Choose the things that bring the green grass, the wells of living water, the vineyards that are there, and the communities that are thriving on the good land. Choose the things that bring life. Choose the things that bring hope, and choose the things that bring peace, to bring honor to Yahweh's great and holy name. All right. Okay. So blessings to you all. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging in there for the rest of this teaching. I hope that it encouraged you, and I hope that it challenges you as well. So be blessed. And until next time, shalom.